I want to thank everybody for joining us for the final leg of our 2025 Montgomery County Football Media Day. Last but not least, we're joined by Clarksville Academy head coach Steadman Bell and senior Willie Wilson Jr. Guys, first of all, before we get started, I just want to say thank you guys for coming in and doing this. It really means a lot. But Coach Bell, I kind of just want to jump right into it. 2-7 last year. Yep. Just how's this offseason been for you ever since, last season ended?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times we reflect back to last season across the staff, and across the team as well. There was a lot of times, a lot of instances that, I always say that people looking just at the scoreboard or looking at our record who didn't really do a deep dive into our season and we realized that there were a lot more closer games from a standpoint of we were just a play or two away from changing the total outcome. So that's some of the things that we've been focusing on. All of our coaching staff have been talking more about execution. And so I feel like that's been a primary focus from the offensive side, particularly because I think our defense played well a little bit more consistently last year than our offensive side did. So on an offensive standpoint, we've been talking about just execution, letting the game slow down, taking what the defense gives us, and just, capitalizing and finishing with points when we get into the red zone.
Like you said, there's a lot of times where people might get caught scoreboard watching, all they do is look at the final score of a game. Were there times last year where you could maybe pick out maybe a game or a series or something like that where you could very visibly see that there was growth and improvement despite the scoreboard?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say, as crazy as it sounds, is, Friendship Christian, game one, week one. They took them roughly about 12 to 15 plays on that first drive to score. And so that just showed really homage to our defense of how they were able to just grow in that moment, not letting the moment get too big. And then, we had an opportunity, unfortunately, Chris, who's at MTSU right now, I think we missed out on a big play on our next offensive drive that he catches that, he scores in game 7-7. So who knows what that may have looked like from that standpoint. But yeah, we can go on and on about the entirety of the season, but there were several moments where I saw that we had some growth. We had some kids who, may have been a sophomore on the field or a junior on the field, but actually stepped up and played like a senior or a junior. So it was really good to see for sure.
Willie, from a player perspective, kind of along those same lines, were there times last year where you guys felt like, you played a lot better game than, what might have ended up being the score on the scoreboard?
I think absolutely. In that FCS game, that friendship game, there was definitely a lot of energy that I noticed as far as growth and just something that was transformative that year versus the years before. Whereas, coming out flat, that's not a very good sign of a close, tight knit group that I think that we'll have going into this next season.
And when you talk about being a tight knit group, how do you guys go about things like that in the off season where it's not necessarily football related, but how do you guys go about kind of becoming more of that tight knit unit that you're talking about?
Just spending time together. We had the privilege. Coach Bell got in contact with some of the people over at the Titans front room, being able to get us out there to practice. So just being able to spend time together, and while that setting was in football, just outside of it, just spending time together and just getting to really know who you're on the field with.
Last year was your second year as a head coach, going into your third year. How has kind of how you approach things, changed ever since, your first year as a head coach to now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. You're always constantly trying to figure out what could you have done better. Where'd you miss out on? I think the ability of, just kind of the practice structure. I think that's one of the biggest pieces. I was always too afraid, and still at points, still afraid of kind of going full throttle because of low numbers. But at the end of the day, I have to keep reminding myself that Friday can't be the first day that they actually get really physical. So we have to do a little bit better job of that. And trying to show these guys that, like Willie mentioned, we took them to the Tennessee Titans practice, and I wanted them to see, now granted, that's a whole different level, but I wanted them to see that you can still practice with great intensity, great sense of urgency, and physicality as well, but while taking care of your teammates. So I think for them to be able to see that, it's something that was really in my heart and not in my mind to really want to make sure that all of our kids got to see that. So being able to just structure the practice a little bit more, have a lot more emphasis and focus on certain things as far as, takeaway drills. deal. So we're really focusing big on that because we understand the opportunity doesn't come, too often. A lot of times teams aren't really just trying to give you the ball. So that's why we don't call it turnover. We call it takeaway. So we got to go take away the ball. So having just more emphasis on things that I feel that is really needed for a team like us, where we can capitalize on defensive points or some type of special teams points, and also putting points on the board from an offensive standpoint as well.
When you've got a small roster like you have, I think last time we talked, you said you had about 30, 35 kids. When you have a roster that small, how do you balance, going full throttle in practice, like you said, to where obviously you don't want anybody getting hurt, but you still want to, have the guys where you feel like they're prepared for the season?
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. It's crazy because you can on Sundays or, sometimes throughout the week, whenever coaches and myself are talking, we can try to put together a great plan of like, oh man, this would be a great, best against best sort of say. But then if one person is hurt or doesn't show up, and it kind of just scraps everything. So we've been trying to be really diligent about how we put that together. A lot of half side stuff as well. So not really getting the complete 11-11. Like I was telling the lady I was in here earlier, on Thursday against Innovation Academy, that was our first time doing 11-11. And so for us, from an offensive standpoint, a lot of our things we do is on air when we go team, just also so they can see the full picture. But we also understand the importance of getting bodies over there. So then I would just kind of maybe not do a secondary and just have more of the box, because of the blocking assignments and all that. So really just trying to be creative. You just have to. And so sometimes that's what comes with it when you have smaller groups and smaller numbers.
And then Willie, kind of one of the positives, I would assume, that to having a smaller roster is, you can get some of those younger guys, some reps a lot earlier than maybe on a squad that has, 90, 100 kids. Someone like you who's an upperclassman, a senior, how do you go about, still making sure that you're doing what you need to do, but you're still out there and kind of helping those younger guys, guide them around, make sure they know what they need to do?
Right. Especially with a team not really as big, but like our numbers is definitely mentoring is definitely an important part in that system. So just focusing on being able to be physically prepared to do your job, because most of the team is going to have more than one job because of just how little our numbers are. So just being able to get them physically prepared to be able to take on the brunt of that load.
You talked about, being physical in practice to get the guys ready. But when you've got a roster that size and you have a lot of guys that play multiple positions, how do you, go about conditioning and those kind of things?
Yeah, I think the importance of it is the what our strength and conditioning coach, Coach Kenny Bennett, who's phenomenal, and just also I don't look at it from a conditioning standpoint from outside of the weight room, but more of inside the weight room. Being able to get that physicality in there, getting the endurance, the stamina built up with the muscle mass and everything. So being able to do those things. But I think again throughout the entirety of the practice, our urge is this, on the hop. Like we don't walk to station to station or walk off the field and everything in that sense. And our coaches are making sure they don't do that. So just those small little tweaks that we can kind of really emphasize, the things that we can control as far as being able to make sure that these kids are getting in shape. It's little small things as far as always having your mouthpiece in. Those little small nuances that a lot of people don't think about, and especially our players, because they think that we're just being, nagging coaches. It's like, no, those little small things are going to help you learn how to breathe. Whenever it's game time is Friday, you always got the mouthpiece in, bouncing around from drill to drill when in between stations. When we break it down, make sure we're jogging off the field. So those little small tweaks just kind of keep the body rocking and rolling.
After last season, were there things that going into the off season where you said that, this is something that we absolutely have to get better at before the start of next year?
Oh, man, there's a long list. So there's a long list. I think the importance, I knew that they were juniors then, but I knew my upcoming senior class had a lot of playing experience. And, you talked about, smaller numbers and, younger kids being able to get out there. Willie was able to play really as an eighth grader, when he came up and moved up as an eighth grader, and just thinking about those things. And it had a huge freshman year. And then, my first year, his sophomore year, he had even a better year. So just thinking about how can we get some of these kids that we know we're going to have to rely on, ready to go, by August 22nd. And so the weight room has always been a huge emphasis. And again, I want to continue to stress that. I think that's one of the most important pieces outside of just the structure from a coaching standpoint. I think that's one of the most important pieces in the program is what does that off-season weight room program look like? And at CA, we do encourage a lot of our kids to do multiple sports. So Willie was doing track, and so a lot of our kids are doing track and basketball and all those things. So it's kind of tough from a one-on-one standpoint to try to do a lot of things and implement some things. But as long as our kids are staying in shape and staying in condition, that's all I can ever ask for. But if we're talking X's and O's, we're just thinking more about how I can get the ball into some of our top players' hands, and how can we limit some things that we do on offense and making sure that we're mastering the things that we really need to do on offense, and that's being able to run the football. And so I've been talking more about that. So I've been trying to find different ways and being a little bit more creative to put our offense in a offense, and if we're looking from a defensive standpoint, in a better position. And so I think our strategy this year is going to be a little different, a little unorthodox, but I think it'll make it work at the end of the day.
Willie, after 2-7 record last year, what do you think that progress looks like, this year, trying to build on last year?
I think last year our biggest problem was when we were down early, it just destroyed our energy throughout the whole game. So just going into this next year, just focusing on keeping that warrior mentality throughout the game, no matter what the score is, no matter what the position is, and just keeping that high intensity energy, whether it's on offense or defense.
Mm-hmm.
What goes into that? How do you just find a way to flip that switch to where, you might feel defeated, like you said at the beginning of the game? How do you kind of flip that switch to where it's kind of the opposite mindset?
Really, it starts with the leaders of our team. It's just being able to give those guys the breadcrumbs to feed off of that energy-wise. So whether that be, getting up after a huge sack or something in your head, I don't know, just something crazy, some celebrating, something like that. Just being able to see the younger guys look at us and be like, okay, we're in this. Let's get back into it.
It hasn't been, that long, but the program hasn't had a winning record since 2022.
Yeah.
But, how do you kind of balance being patient with what you're doing and trying to build, culture and stuff like that, and still on the flip side of that kind of have some urgency to where, you still want to win some games?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the patience is virtue, obviously, not to reflect too far on where I came from at NCS, and you were used to that. And obviously we battled against Clarksville Academy as well. They had a Mr. Football winner. So like you said, they're super, super talented, super gifted across the board. But the patience is everything. It's all about because what Coach Murray was doing and his philosophy and the way that he went about his coaching style with his kids and development is completely different than I wanted to do and I'm wanting to do. And so just being able to have that patience, be able to instill that trust and gain the trust from not only the administration, the student population, the players, but also the coaches that you bring on. So it's a little frustrating at times because you're competitive, like Willie was talking about. You just got to have that fire about you, that competitive edge. And so as you can start to kind of really look and dissect things and realize that, okay, you see some growth, you see some things that you can have happen that you can build off of. And I think that's what has kept me hungry and what's really more exciting about this coming up year. Again, you do a great job of doing a deep dive, but for the average person, they don't realize that the brutal schedule that we had my first 2 years here. You look at our schedule and, we had 3 or 4 state, defending state champs or back-to-back champs. And so it's a really good region. The middle region and D2 single A is a really good region. It just got that much better. And we may touch on it a little bit, but you add Friendship Christian to the middle region now again. So again, it's another defending state champ for a couple of years ago. Always going to have Nashville Christian, which is really good as well. And then DCA. So, but then after that, if I'm being completely honest with you, like we have talked about it and I don't like to talk. I like to obviously go game by game. You don't want to look too far ahead, but I feel really good about the 2025 season and moving forward as well.
Kind of looking at that schedule you're talking about,
Yeah.
you open with Hunters Lane at home.
Yeah.
Then you're at Fort Campbell, then Grace Christian at home, then Nashville Christian, then you're at Friendship for your first 2 region games.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're at Montgomery Central, at Ezel Harding, Donaldson Christian Academy at home, Franklin Christian on the road. Then you finish out with Mount Juliet Christian at home.
Yeah.
Just, like you mentioned, that D2 single A region, Nashville Christian, Friendship Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Nashville Christian's obviously got, 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis going to play in the SEC. But, those non-region games, how do you think those are going to help you, get ready for that gauntlet that's in your region?
Absolutely. I think it gives us a little bit of everything that we need to see. I'm looking at a team like Hunter's Lane. They're going through a whole new rebuild as well. I met the new coach there. He's coming from, I think, Ohio, but really great guy. But he's a program changer. That's what he does. So if you look at his history, he kind of changes programs. So I know it's going to take him a second, but Hunter's Lane is going to have skill. They're going to have athletes, which is what we need. They're going to have some big guys as well. It's what we need to see. And then you look at a team like Montgomery Central, we're bringing back a rivalry, which that's going to bring a lot of excitement as well. But again, I know they're going to have some big boys up there from a physicality standpoint. So I think that you look at all of our non-region games, it gives us a little bit of at Fort Campbell, we scrimmaged them last year. And so, so Coach Mitchell and I was like, man, we just need to make it happen. So I know they're going to have some skilled guys. It's always kind of tough with Fort Campbell because, you don't know who's coming in, who's going out and all that. So, but I still feel like the makeup of our non-region opponents is going to be the best of every world that we can think of that's going to help us propel throughout our middle region. And so not a cakewalk by any means, but I do feel pretty good and pretty confident about our non-region opponents.
Willie, you don't have your first region game until week 4. And then you play back-to-back region games. Then you have 2 non-region games before you finish out the final 3 games of your region schedule. When you've got those first 3 games of the year that are non-region games, do you think those can kind of serve as tune-ups going into that region schedule where if you're going into the regular season and you guys feel like there's still stuff that you need to work on, do you think that those games can kind of serve as tune-ups for your region schedule?
Absolutely, I do think so. Like Coach talked about earlier, like just taking it game by game, stacking it up. I think those games can definitely serve as because we have some younger guys on the team, so definitely serving as, I guess, that first little taste of high school football. I remember when I was a freshman and starting, and it was a very nerve-wracking time for me. But once I got through those first few games, it all kind of made sense. I started to gel together with my defense and stuff like that. So I think just from a standpoint of getting those younger guys in and just overall being able to play 11-minute football as a team, that's something that I think those first few games can do for us.
And all those younger guys, obviously the game is a lot different than practice. Yeah. But how do you try to get those guys ready for the game?
Oh man, there's one thing that I've learned is it's really hard to simulate a game, and no matter what level you're on, all you can do is just kind of make sure that we get all the nervousness out, like Willie was talking about, at that first kickoff. That's why, reflecting back when I was in high school, that's why I love being on kickoff or kickoff return. Like I just need to feel that one level, either getting hit or making a block or whatever that may look like. But I think just the preparation, again, just living. I heard that one of my college coaches told me that strength breeds confidence, and so if we can kind of get these kids stronger in the weight room, it's going to have them at a level of confidence that they probably didn't even know they had. But like I've said before, I always tell our guys when we call it up after practice or after a scrimmage or whatever, I always tell them, look to their left and look to the right. Like you're going to play football. This is who we have. And so would we like for 30 other kids to come on in and follow in? Yeah, absolutely. Would we like for 10 more kids? Of course. But at the end of the day, we coach who we coach. And so our kids have understood that. And I know Coach Willie is here. I know he said he's just a dad, but he's one of my coaches as well. And so he also understands, and we've all been preaching. He can vouch. It's like, you're up. So, tell your mom, tell your grandparents and all that, you're going to be playing some football. So hopefully that, Willie, these scrimmages are going to be huge. And, being able to have, Innovation Academy as a tune-up game to be able to get these kids in there, let them see what the varsity level is looking like. And then, this coming up Friday, we'll have Houston County, who's going to be big and physical. We have Todd County, who's going to have some skill and athletes as well. Just, leading up to that. And then we finish our preseason with Joe Burns, which is another, longtime rival with CA. So bringing all that back into the mix, into the fold, these kids there's no time to kind of sit on the sideline and wait. Like we got to go and we got to get going early.
We talked about it a little bit, off camera. Had your first scrimmage of the year the other night against Innovation Academy. Yeah. it's only their second year playing 11-man football. But, how do you think you guys looked against them?
Yeah, I mean, I truthfully, I think we looked pretty okay. There were a lot of things that we just missed out on. And my biggest, I hate being a negative Nancy of things because, I mean, we scored when we needed to. We got stops. We got a lot of turnovers, and we did what we've been preaching about. But for me, for the betterment of our season, like we were talking about our middle region and even our non-region game, we have to be better. We want to highlight some of the good things and all that, but we have to also understand that, we can't have these type of mistakes when you're playing against a DCA or Friendship Christian or NCS or Montgomery Central. But overall, I thought we looked okay. I thought we ran the ball really well, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted us to be able to run the ball and defensively play lights out, created 4 or 5 turnovers, I had 2 touchdowns on turnovers, so fumble, scoop and score. So those things were always great and always beautiful. And I would say this, Innovation Academy has some huge kids. So I don't know what they feed those kids in Springfield, but they were big. And so, but I felt like our kids, and I set the precedence of them. I was like, hey, look, you guys are the better team. I'm just being honest with you guys. So let's go out there and play like it. And I think they did. They had the energy like Coach Willie was talking, or not Coach Willie, but Willie was talking about. And we capitalized on, some of the mistakes that Innovation made.
Willie, you guys have 6 starters coming back on offense, 5 back on defense. People, might know some of the guys that have been there, like yourself and Ethan Bones, your quarterback is back, Andreas Scott. But who are some guys that you think that, didn't get a lot of playing time last year or maybe didn't make much of an impact that you think could be one of those guys to step up and play a role this year?
Put you on the spot.
Mason Newschwander is definitely a big guy. He's our defensive tackle, our defensive tackles. Mm-hmm. He's got a good motor. Yep. I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays this year. Tristan Cobbler. Yep. He'll be coming back and playing safety for us. Mm-hmm. He's definitely a guy who can come down and make a hit when he needs to. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to. Mm-hmm. A couple of the younger guys, I'd say, from the defensive standpoint, I'd say Taz. Mm-hmm. He's definitely looking to have a good year. Yep. Trig, Zay, just really most of our defense obviously is younger guys. Like you said, only having 5 starters come back on defense. But really everybody's looking to have a up and up year. Yeah. So.
When you look at personnel, are you a guy that's, always trying to coach to a system, or are you somebody that's able to kind of change on the fly to kind of work with what you have?
Man, that's a wonderful question. That's something that one of my off-season things I've been talking about as well. Not to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but I look at Clarksville Academy Cougars as the same sense of the Tennessee Titans. From, you had Brian Callahan, who was at, the Bengals, and he had Joe Burrow and all those things. And then he comes to Tennessee and, well, there's no Joe Burrow, and so he had to try to change up, his things of how he was doing but it's tough to do because that's what like that's what you feel comfortable with, that's what you feel confident with. So for me as a coach, I've been, especially from an offensive standpoint, I've been more leaning up on my quarterbacks is what makes this thing go. So I'm now asking them more questions of like, what do they feel more comfortable with doing? And trying to adjust and adapt to them and adjust and adapt to their comfortability, because I don't want them overthinking. As soon as we overthink, then it's just too late. So to answer your question, I feel like it's one of those things where I have the system in place, but we can actually adjust and make the right amount of tweaks for the comfortability of our kids.
Willie, when you can have, some of that input like Coach is talking about, where you kind of have the freedom to make your own decisions sometimes, does that kind of help you guys as players and as a team to go out there and maybe play a little bit more free, a little bit more loose, knowing that, he has that trust in you guys to kind of make your own decisions?
It's definitely freeing, being that experienced player, being able to play all 4 years, or start all 4 years, just being able to put my experience onto the field almost like another coach is out there with those guys, and being able to sort of dictate or kind of lead that group on the field.
How much growth, have you seen out of the guys just from, the end of last year to now, throughout the offseason, fall? or spring practice and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's been great. One of the things that I've been harping on since I got here was being more of a player-led team. And I think once you can get a team that's player-led, obviously they will have the coaches to still help guide them. But at the end all be all, the 11 men that are on the field are not any of those coaches. We're all retired. We're done. We got to hang up the cleats. It's all about the kids. And so having a close-knit group like the Willie and Andreas and Caleb and Gray, like those kids are super close. So being able to see that they know the expectations, there's a lot of times where we don't even have to say anything. And they're already, Willie, that's why I said Coach Willie a while ago. Yes, Coach Willie is his dad, but Coach Willie as well, Willie Jr. is on the field. And so there's a lot of instances in the running back group and our linebacker group is that. And Devin Cheek is another kid who's been, really, really phenomenal from a football standpoint. So to see the growth that they know the expectation of the coaches now and they're holding each other accountable before we even get to them is great. So there may be some things that take place that we don't even realize because they've already got it taken care of. So yes, we want to be able to do that. I think the kids will run through a brick wall and a concrete wall or whatever kind of wall you want to put up if they know that the coaches within themselves trust them. And so I want to continue to do that, but we will guide and we will make sure that we're doing things how we see it. But for the most part, I've been trying to be really consistent of what we do from an offensive standpoint. We did change up our defense a little bit, but so now from an offensive standpoint, and our coaches will tell you it's been the same thing for almost 3 years now. Now, again, adding a few tweaks here for the betterment of our quarterback or O-line or whatever that may look like. But ultimately, I love the fact that these kids are a close-knit community. And, we did the overnight practice again, which I think is really cool. You came out last year, correct? Yeah, you came out last year. So we missed you this year. I guess it was a little too late. So, but those little small things right there, I think, is really beneficial to kind of help propel these kids and these young men to be able to have that accountability on the football field.
We talked about earlier balancing patience and urgency.
Yeah.
What does a successful season look like this year in your mind?
Yeah, I would say this. This is one thing that I love because freak things happen. But I feel like, first of all, coming away, healthy from, all of our kids, making sure they're able to move on after this football season healthy. But, if I'm being honest with, we're looking at numbers, we got to get 5 to 6 wins. We got to get out there and get those 5 to 6 wins, which is really doable. It's really doable. And it's not, it's not something that we're just blowing smoke to the kids. But we have to stay healthy, which is huge, and we have to be consistent, and we all have to continue to be bought in, and not just from the kids aspect, but also from the administration all the way down. So I think a successful season for us will get those 5 or 6 wins, get into the playoff. You never know, shock somebody and squeak past the first round of the playoffs, which I don't know the history on CA that well. I should, but I don't think we've been past the first round in quite some time. So, but and not to bring up the other season, whenever that we lost to Lakeway here in overtime. But I think that's what is a successful season for me, getting those 5 to 6 wins, getting into the playoffs, and just playing on after that last regular season game, which I think will be huge.
I want to thank Coach Bell and Willie for joining me to conclude our 2025 Montgomery County Football Media Day. You can check out the Cougars this fall, and you can check out all of our high school football coverage at mainstreetclarksville.com.